right, welcome back to the Heisman Trophy podcast. Hope you guys are enjoying the offseason. We are on episode 2 of our exploration into talent and what makes elite athletes like Heisman Trophy winners different from ordinary athletes. I am your host, Chris Houston, and we have a blockbuster show for you today. Curt Cignetti, head coach of the national champion Indiana Hoosiers, is here today. He will talk about Fernando Mendoza, his experience with Fernando, trying to give us some insight into what makes Fernando Mendoza such a special player. The blockbuster episode continues with Lincoln Riley, USC head football coach of 3 Heisman Trophy winners. There are only 4 coaches in college football history who have coached at least 3 Heisman Trophy winners. He is one of them, the only active coach. He, of course, coached Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Caleb Williams. We're going to ask him about his former players and talk about what made them so special. And then to close out the show, we are once again going to talk to a Winter Olympic gold medalist, Kristi Yamaguchi, the 1992 Olympic champion. She is also the Heisman Humanitarian Award winner for 2019. A fierce competitor in her own right, she is going to explain to us what it takes to compete at the highest levels with the intense pressure of the Olympic spotlight beating down on you. Before we bring on Coach Cignetti, I just want to remind everybody, please like, subscribe, review, tell your family, tell a friend about the Heisman Trophy podcast. Go look at our guest list. I challenge you to find a better guest list amongst all sports podcasts out there. We are slowly but surely becoming one of the places online where college football athletes and athletes of all stripes and coaches congregate to talk about their sport and other issues. And of course, in keeping with the mission of the Heisman and the Heisman Trophy Trust, we always endeavor to highlight the positive, the uplifting aspects of sports and its role in society. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, but first, let's have a word from our only 2-time Heisman Trophy winner.
This is Archie Griffin, 1974, 1975's Heisman Trophy winner, and you're listening to the official Heisman podcast.
This offseason, the Heisman Trophy podcast is exploring what separates Heisman winners and other elite performers from regular athletes. We want to find out how that talent is first discovered, how those key developmental attributes are first brought together with that unique athleticism, why these players are specifically wired the way they are. And to that end, the man who coached the most recent Heisman Trophy winner is sure to have great insight on those matters. And so we welcome Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti to the Heisman Trophy podcast. Welcome, Coach.
It's good to be here. Hope you're doing well.
I definitely am. You've described your evaluation process as production over potential. When you watched Fernando Mendoza's Cal tape, what specifically did you see that fit that standard? And was there anything that gave you pause?
No, the talent was unmistakable. He had the size. He had the mobility. He could run. He had a whip. I mean, he's got a strong arm. And he was a playmaker. Now, he played on a team that was in a lot of close games and fell short and took a lot of sacks, 41 sacks, I think. Mm-hmm. So patience in the pocket, footwork, some of those kind of things, processing, needed to be developed once he was here. The talent was unmistakable. And we had the younger brother. So I understood where the brother grew up, how he was brought up. And it's a family of high achievers. Yeah. And Fernando wanted to be a great player. He made that quite clear. He wanted to be developed. We had a history of development at that position, which attracted him, and had his brother behind us, who wasn't too thrilled that he was coming because his brother wanted to be the guy, mm-hmm. but could vouch for the program and how the quarterback is coached. So the one thing about Fernando is his idol was Tom Brady, and he wanted to be great. And he did everything within his power to be the very best he could be. Whether, we acquired VR technology, which the Washington Redskins were using, where you plug in a defense and your plays, and it's like a game. You put a little thing out on the field. I'd see him after practice Thursday, working on footwork, just the time, but it was organized and structured smartly. So it was great use of time. But I think what you're asking really, the way you led into this, is what separates good from great. Because there are a lot of good players. And to be a good player at this level, you have to be consistent. And and you know, you got to have good habits, good, strong commitment, discipline, work ethic, resiliency, be able to handle success and failure. But the great ones have a special discipline,
Mm-hmm.
a special commitment, uh, and that they are always striving uh, toward the end goal, whatever that goal would be. And in Fernando's case, it was to be the best he could be, process oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now, look, you got to have a special ability also. Let's not kid ourselves here. Um, and I saw it on tape. He was without a doubt our number one guy. We were thrilled to get him. There were no reservations at all. You know, we had to fight off Georgia and Miami to get him. And now he needed work once he got here, but you couldn't slow that guy down.
You've mentioned that you can sometimes tell a lot about a player just from a handshake. What did you notice about him the first time you sat down with him?
Well, I felt like I knew him already, even though we hadn't never met and only talked very briefly on the phone, knowing the background of the family and the younger brother. But yeah, I mean, he great looking guy, great eye contact, extremely intelligent. I mean, he can go really deep on a lot of different subjects. He's got a lot of facets to his personality. And I guess the one thing I didn't know about him, because you know, he's such a nice guy. And sometimes, okay, yeah, he can come off a little geeky sometimes, right? Is what kind of competitor would he be? Uh, and now he competed at Cal, but then you get him and you tend to forget some of the things you saw at Cal. But boy, I'll tell you what, that guy was a lion, a ferocious competitor. Take a hit, jump back up, lay it on the line, and really respected by his teammates. You know, as we got going, because of the way he competed and the way he prepared and the way he treated his teammates, and such a team-oriented guy. Can't say enough great things about him.
Of course, he had a lot of other things that he was involved with. You know, he got his degree early. He was doing internships. He has a lot of different interests. When you're a coach checking out a player for the first time, getting to know him, most of the time is having disparate interests something that you don't want to have, or is it something that you tolerate, or is it something that maybe in Fernando's case, it clearly adds to his overall sort of the full piece of what he has to offer?
Well, I think there's no doubt that it added to the overall piece. And, you know, quite frankly, when they come on an official visit, even then you only have so much amount of time. And Dad was very involved too in the process. And, you know, so the focus was more on the football part of it and the developmental part, in which he expressed that he wanted to be a great quarterback. He wanted to be NFL first rounder. I knew what you know, his goals were. Uh, I didn't really realize how multifaceted he was until after we had him a while.
Mm-hmm. Did you, you know, he had the big play against in the championship game, the 12-yard touchdown run, which I think might be the greatest individual play ever by a Heisman Trophy winner. You know, I'm a Heisman historian, going back and looking at it, given the setting, given the stakes there. I'm sure at that point you weren't necessarily surprised at what he did, but was there a point in the season where he sort of went beyond what you had expected of him as far as like how he was able to rise to the occasion in these incredibly high pressure moments?
Yeah, and you know, we have had great quarterback success, and they all kind of follow the same trajectory, and they have an early season success, game 2 or 3, and really build on it. He was Mr. Clutch in the tight games, fourth quarter, last drive or two of the game. Boy, I tell you what, that's when he was money. And you know, Iowa. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what a dogfight! A lot of house blitz, a lot of big hits on the quarterback, some
Yeah.
great throws with people in his face. Makes the big 50-yard touchdown play at the end of the game. Oregon, the very next week, you know, throws the pick when we're up, I think maybe 7 or 10, can't remember. But no, I think that tied it.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter, I believe it was. It wasn't, you know, it's always on the quarterback a little bit, but, you know, the protection wasn't what it needed to be. He didn't have the opportunity to set his feet. The receiver should have flattened the route. And thus we have an interception.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes off on the sideline, and a lot of support from his teammates. And I just sort of gave him a little pat on the back and said, "You having fun yet?" And, you know, and then he makes all the plays at the end of the game. Penn
Yeah.
State,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, 2-minute drive, 25-yard line, no timeouts, minute 40, sacked on 1st and 10, 2nd and 17, and 3 straight series we've done nothing but go backwards, and he's just got hit every time he dropped back.
Yeah.
He makes an unbelievable throw on a fastball, hit as he's throwing it, doesn't even get to step into the throw, and just on the money every play down the field, and then a great throw and a great catch by Omar Cooper. And that's really when you kind of like, I've been doing this a long time, right? And, I think a lot of us coaches, you don't believe the hype. I'm talking about our team now, because you know what concerns are every week, where you might be able to get exploited. But when we pulled that one off, and he pulled that one off, and everybody did on the team, you had, as I walked across the field, it had to flash in your mind, this could be a team of destiny here.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You talk about his tremendous athleticism, all the physical attributes he has. Those jump off the tape when you watch him. But those plays, they require something else, right? That really separates him. What do you think that separates him in the moment? And is it something that you can develop, or do you have to find it? Do you have to get lucky?
Well, the ability to play your best when the pressure's on, when you're fully prepared, you have that ability. And when you buy into the process of playing one play at a time, 6 seconds of play, playing every play like it's nothing, you're not affected by the circumstances of the game, except that, he's stepping up because he knows this is my time. It's crunch time. They need me. And he's got confidence he can make the plays. And he could make them with his arm or his legs, which was a huge plus. And so I just think that, there's some guys that play that position when the chips are down. They play their best football, and that's what separates probably the great quarterbacks of all time from the guys that just had great statistics.
Mm-hmm. I saw him in high school, or at least I saw his old tape, and you could still see the athleticism, see a lot of the talent. What do you think evaluators were missing back then? Like, is it often the case where you just hear too much buzz about a player beforehand, and this influences you going in, so you tend to invent what you want to see?
It could be. I think the quarterback recruiting nowadays happens so early. You see guys going into their junior year, and most of them are committed already. I never saw his high school tape. I was at James Madison then. We weren't real heavy in the Miami area at the time that he came out, so I never saw it. We went into Miami, I think the following year or 2 years later, and got his brother. The first time I saw him on tape, because I'm a tape junkie, I'm always in the off season, was probably the first year he played some significant minutes at Cal. And I said, oh, that's Alberto's brother. He's pretty good. And then the next year saw even more. So it was always there. And whether he was a late developer, I can't really say. But I think the fire burning in his belly to be great was always there based on what I read.
Does your first opinion of a player, when you look at him on tape, is that usually one that ends up being the most accurate?
I think within the first 5 plays, you got a pretty good idea. It's not always 100% correct, but you got a pretty good idea.
Is it something where sometimes you can, like I said, you can hear what someone says about a player? You try to not get an opinion on a player before you look at him, or do you research him before you look?
We make our own evaluations. And like in the portal, the benefit there is you Google a guy, you get the ESPN stats, you see what his production numbers are, right, at all positions. But we make our own evaluations. We don't listen to other people. Now, that doesn't mean we won't ask the high school coach, what do you think of this guy? We do that, but we're not into stars and rankings and all that kind of stuff.
You've now coached a series of great quarterbacks, first at JMU, Curtis Rourke at Indiana, now Mendoza. All of them really outperformed their recruiting profile. Is there a common thread in how you develop quarterbacks specifically, or does it just change from player to player?
They've all been different. We've had the true pocket and the true duel, and then the in-betweeners. And, you got to adjust to the quarterback's strengths, what he does best, and then tailor it around your personnel. Start with the offensive line. How well can you run the football? Because that helps out every quarterback. Mm-hmm. And then, what you're going to do throwing the ball, and then are you going to utilize the guy's legs or not? So we've had great staff continuity with Mike Shanahan at offensive coordinator, and myself. We've been together a long time. I'm a quarterback guy and very involved in the offensive meetings. Got some younger coaches on the offensive side. And, of course, they're not as young as they used to be because they've been with me a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all on the same page, and I think that really helps in the development of all the players, really, that the whole staff is on the same page and the players are hearing the same thing throughout.
I've argued that Fernando's career was the full expression of what a modern college football player can accomplish. Here's a guy who earned his degree, did his internships, experienced the full college experience at two great universities, still earned his money, right? But was kind of a throwback to the old amateurism ideal, at least the concept of it. Is he a unicorn, or is he the harbinger of more athletes wanting to be like him and kind of experience the whole process of being a college athlete and student and wanting to become a complete person?
Maybe a little bit of both, really. Maybe he's a unicorn that will lead others down his path. A very well-rounded guy that was really dedicated to his craft, but had other interests and could speak on a lot of things. And when football ends, he can do whatever he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to write his own ticket,
yeah.
And he really is probably the most special guy when you consider everything in his toolkit that I've ever been around.
Well, that's some great insight, Coach. Thanks again for coming on the Heisman Trophy podcast. We look forward to seeing what you have cooked up for the Hoosiers in the fall. Congratulations again on the national title, and we'll see you in the fall.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey guys, this is Barry Sanders, the 1988 Heisman Trophy winner, and you are listening to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Okay, there are only 4 head coaches in college football history who have coached at least 3 Heisman Trophy winners. The late Frank Leahy of Notre Dame is one. He coached 4. Nick Saban of Alabama coached 4 as well. Pete Carroll coached 3 at USC. And the only active coach on that list is Lincoln Riley of USC. He coached 3 Heisman Trophy winners, 2 at Oklahoma, 1 at USC. Welcome, Coach, to the Heisman Trophy podcast.
Thanks, Chris. It's good to be with you.
I want to ask you about your Heisman guys, because what we're trying to do this offseason is figure out what separates these individuals from other players. What are there certain characteristics that are common through? Is there a through line that goes through these players, whether it's athletically or mental and that kind of thing? So let's just go through some of your guys, or all your guys. Baker Mayfield. I'm curious, what was the first thing you thought about him when you first saw him play?
Yeah, I could tell. I could tell Chris that he really had a flair for the big moments. You could tell that, like some people, the stage, especially as this stage gets bigger and bigger as you go on in the sport, sometimes people shy away from the big stage, and then there's some people that the big stage, like, they're meant for it, and the bigger the stage, the better. And Baker, to me, always had that characteristic. He played with a lot of moxie. He played with a lot of energy. He was an incredibly decisive player, very smart player, but there was always kind of that flair for the dramatic and flair for the big moments that you just never felt that any of it was too big for him, and that he was kind of made for it. And then obviously as time went on, he got better and better as a player, and you matched up that kind of God-given mentality that he had with some skills that really developed and a great football mind. And the end result was one heck of a football player.
It's interesting. Each of the 3 guys, there's like 3 different test cases. Baker, of course, was a walk-on. He kind of took, like you said, a few years to kind of marinate a bit until he really just reached his peak. Kyler Murray was, unlike Baker, was a big-time recruit, national recruit. He goes to Texas A&M, transfers over, and then wins as a 4th-year junior. And then Caleb, I think one of the more unique situations, going with you from Oklahoma to USC, in a sense. I don't think that's ever really happened. And so how much of it is the circumstances that each one of these guys was involved in, and the context of everything that happened versus, or is it a mix of everything, do you think, that ends up making these guys special?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a little bit of a mix to it, but I think it's guys that took their circumstances and whatever they were, and they found the advantages in them, right? They found a way to make it work, whether it was Baker, coming in as a walk-on and doing that thing, whether it was Kyler, transferring, and that was back, which seems ages ago, where you actually had to sit when you transferred. And so he sat for a year. Baker ended up getting an extra year. And so Kyler essentially then, had Baker in the room for a year that we didn't necessarily think was going to happen. So Kyler essentially, sat a year, was a backup for a year. And it was really, not until that third year at OU that he really got on the field. So he had to persevere, through a little bit of that in the middle of his career. And then in some form or fashion, he had to have some patience.
Mm-hmm.
That's not easy when, as you said, you've been as decorated of a high school player. I mean, you talk about a guy that may be the greatest high school player of all time.
Yeah.
And so he had to have a lot of patience and trust and had to keep developing behind the scenes, which he did, so that when his opportunity came, he was ready. Caleb's opportunity came midway through his true freshman year in the OU Texas game, which is one of the biggest games that there is. And he was ready for it and, finished that year strong. And then obviously came with us out here to USC and, had to do it with a new team, as we were kind of restarting a program and really had to start from scratch. And when he had his Heisman year. And so he had to show a lot, I think, leadership and kind of really help the program along at that time because everything else about it was new. So, but I do think, Chris, I look back on it now, like, all right, well, what if Baker would have been in Kyler's situation, right? Or Caleb would have been in Baker's situation. And I think, like, knowing all of those guys, I honestly believe any of them would have made any of the situations work because that's how they were wired, right? They were super competitive. They weren't going to make excuses. They weren't going to let anything be their crutch, and they were going to find an advantage no matter what it was. And I think they had that self-belief and that drive and that work ethic to match it, and that's what made them special.
Do you think there's a point in a career or in a player's arc, development arc, where it has to be there by that time, or it's just not going to happen? I mean, because you talk about Baker and a lot, he didn't really get many scholarship offers. Did that show up later? That readiness for the spotlight that you referenced earlier, or was it always there? Was it dormant? Did people just not? Did they discount it because of other factors? Like, how do you explain that?
I think you got to explain it on a case by case basis, right? Because there's so much that goes into it, and like each guy's scenario is so different. I think you have to have some innate traits. Chief which for me is you got to have an elite confidence and self-belief. You have to have that. And if you don't, you're going to get challenged at some point. Something's not going to go your way. It's so competitive at this level. And all three of those guys have instances where, they could have backed away from it or let their confidence wane. And playing, I know we're obviously talking about quarterbacks here, and I know it's been the majority of the winners. I mean, playing that position is a lonely position. I mean, it is lonely. Everybody watching a game, whether they're rooting for you, rooting against you, or just watching the game, everybody watches what the quarterback does. Even people that don't even have a clue about football, they watch the quarterback. They watch the quarterback. They're going to see their successes, but their failures are going to be on display for everybody as well. And so you really have to believe in yourself, and you really have to have a true confidence about you. And I think that's something I think that is a little hard to teach. I do think some of these guys had skill sets that showed up later. I think like Kyler is a great example. I think he believed in himself as a quarterback, but a lot of people know, Kyler was a phenomenal baseball player. And in fact, when we started recruiting him, the plan the whole time was he was going to try to play both in college, and then he would go on and be a professional baseball player. And I think some of that was, are you really going to have, a 5'10" quarterback in the NFL? A lot of us were just kind of coming out of that era where, even if you were 6'2", you were still a little short for the position. And so as his career developed, he was doing well in baseball. He was starting to certainly improve on the football field for us there at OU. He gets drafted number 9 overall by the A's, and it's like, all right, everything's going according to plan. And I remember we sat down midway through the year that he started for us at OU, and he asked me, we just we had a bye week, and we were doing just a little like, all right, catch our breath, a little progress report. And I remember saying to him, like, hey, I know, like, trust me, I get you just went like number 9 overall in a professional draft, which is remarkable. But like, I want you to know too, like based on what I'm seeing, like you could play football for a long time too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly, that was one of the really first times that he really thought about it seriously. He loved football, but it was, it was like, is that really going to be a true path? And he was developing, he was having success, his confidence was growing, and then obviously ultimately ends up going number 1 overall, which is remarkable. You have one athlete go top 10 in 2 professional drafts. It tells you how unique he is and was. But yeah, I think there's got to be, back to your question, there's got to be some innate qualities, but there's got to be development, right?
Yeah.
Nobody has it all, right? And if they think they do, then they're probably not going to work as hard as they would need to develop those skills anyway. And so, so yeah, I think you're going to need both, but that inner belief, man, without that, you can work as hard as you want, you can do all you want. If you don't believe in yourself, it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, a little bit of chip on the shoulder, right? For Baker, because of being the walk on, right? And for Kyler being shorter, being a guy who was also into baseball in the sense that maybe he didn't think he was being taken as seriously in football as, because of his height. So that's got to be a good motivator for those guys as well, right?
It is. I think that's a great point, and I think they all kind of found that edge. Baker did it more. Baker's was more outward, right? Baker had a chip on his shoulder the size of the state of Texas. I mean, it still does. I mean, it's just that's just him for people that know him. Kyler did, but it was certainly more internal. And I think even Caleb, I know a lot of people don't know this story, but when we were recruiting Caleb at Oklahoma, we had it down to 2 guys that we were going to recruit for the quarterback position that year. And the other kid that we had offered, it kind of surprised us, but he just jumped on it and committed. And I've always been one of those guys that, hey, if a guy's committed and he says he's coming, like I don't recruit anybody else at that position. It's just something I've always believed in. And so that kid commits, and I call Caleb and his dad and tell him, hey, I'm sorry, but like this guy committed, and I'm not gonna be able to recruit you right now. And they weren't happy about it, and I think kind of just to show how much they believed and how much Caleb believed in himself, and I think it showed some of his edge a little bit. They flew out to a game, on their own. I told them I wasn't even going to meet with them because I was trying to show some loyalty to the other kid that had committed. Although I loved Caleb as a player, and they were like, well, the hell with it. Like, we'll just walk on. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Like, that's like just that edge. Like, I'm going to go prove it. Like, you don't think you're going to take me? Like, all right, I'm going to go prove to you one way or another that I'm the right guy for the job here. And as fate would have it, the other guy ended up staying closer to home. And then, we immediately pivoted back to Caleb. And honestly, going through that situation, like after that happened, deep down, I was like, all right, that told me everything I need to know about this guy.
Wow. So when you first saw Kyler, I imagine it was very early in his career, right? He had to have been early high school career. You were watching him from that point onward.
I was, yeah.
When you see a prospect of obviously his talent jumps off, off the field, that you jumps off the tape, and then you have to talk to him, right? And you sort of have to say, let's say you're in love with his physical tools, and then you have to talk to him and try to be in love with his mental tools. And is there a danger, I guess I would say, in you've convinced yourself that the tools are so good, and so you let some things slide? Is that something that's a challenge to do when you're looking at these types of athletes?
100%. I think we've all, as coaches, gone through that, and made decisions ended up great, and made decisions that we wish we had back. And talent is a tempting thing. I mean, it is. Turn on the tape and see somebody's talent or see what they do, and it's that's tough to ignore and tough to say no to. So absolutely. I mean, I think typically the best decisions go back to when you have priorities, and what you're looking for. And in Kyler's case, I mean, he was one for me that, I mean, you knew what he was doing at Allen High School and the legendary run that they were on. And I saw him play, and I thought he was as good as anybody I'd ever seen. I mean, they made the game in big boy ball, big ball in Texas, in that area where the competition is off the charts. He made the game look easy, and that's not an easy game. And he's playing against other really good teams and players and coaches. And it was just, it was different. And so I had a lot of belief, but I've tried to, especially with that position, because I've been so, tied in with these guys. I've tried to stick to, I want to get excited about what I see on tape, but I want to feel equally as excited about the conversations we have and just about working with the person. And if I'm really excited about both, that's kind of been my little inner, I guess, like barometer, if you will, right? Of like, okay, this is somebody that meets the criteria and I feel like can really work. And so that's maybe helped me avoid a few through the years that maybe, like you said, you're really tempted by the talent, but maybe there's a part of, their personality or their work ethic or whatever that maybe you don't think is the right fit. So I got to get pretty excited about both, but he was one.
Yeah.
I mean, all these guys were great examples of the talent was obviously there, but you loved what they brought along with that.
And then Caleb comes along, and he's in a completely different era as those first two guys, right? So he's in this NIL era, and he's got a brand. He's a brand, He's out there. He's already got his charity working, and so with Fernando Mendoza, I was thinking about that. I was talking to I think Neil Everett about this, about how Fernando is such he's interested in all kinds of things, right? He does all the NBA stuff and the LinkedIn's and the interning and all that. And someone said, well, if he hadn't won, then people would have said, well, if he hadn't spent all his time doing this stuff, maybe he would have won.
Sure.
And is there that worry that they get caught up in this, or you have to figure out if they can handle it, I guess, right? You have to figure out, is this the kind of guy who can handle that plus the pressure of playing the position? Right. You know what I mean? Is that just a special guy who can do that as well?
Well, I mean, I think one, it's something that's evolved right through the years, right? Like for so long, I mean, the guys like as athletes were just viewed as that, right? And that's kind of all they did, and that's all their identity was. And as time has evolved, a lot of these great athletes have used that to, to enter into different interests that they have, whether it's personally or professionally or from a business standpoint, or to help set up, maybe what they might do once their playing career ends. How many great athletes are there out there that when their playing career ends, they kind of lose their identity, right? And they don't have that next plan or that next thing set up. So I think it's been that's something I think that's developed over the years. You wouldn't have thought about it 20 years ago, but I think that's something that's been a huge positive, because I think it's helping these guys learn more than just the game, and they're able to have interest outside of it and can still develop, not just as a player, but just all around. And then to have something there when the game's gone, whether it's you retire or you have an unfortunate injury or whatever the case may be. So I think that's been a positive development. I think with that, whether it's, colleges like us or professional organizations, we've had to learn how to support that. We've had to learn how to help guys now not lose too much focus on their day job, right? But still be able to manage the outside things that they want to do. And so I think, I think that's just kind of the natural evolution of it. But I think it's positive. I think a lot of guys are capable of it. A guy like Fernando, I haven't been around him a lot, but seems to have a good grasp of, how to prioritize his time and keeping the main thing, but not having to completely shut off outside interests. And I think he's a good role model, I think, for a lot of guys on, how to do it well, how to build a great reputation on top of also, becoming a really productive football player. So I think whether it's somebody like Caleb in the beginning of the NIL era or somebody like Fernando now, the more good examples that we have, the more it'll be better for all these next generations that are coming up. And this thing will continue to evolve. And hopefully guys like that can continue to set a great example.
Yeah, and finally, Coach, you've got a great quarterback right now at USC, Jaden Mayava. He was on the show last year, got a chance to talk to him. What are some characteristics or traits that remind you of one of your other guys or are as common with them?
Yeah, I think he's a really resilient team guy. He's really, really competitive. The team being successful, the team winning is the most important thing to him. And it was the same with those other three guys. He is he's a little bit on the quieter side. He's not quite as outgoing as a Baker, or a Caleb, somewhere kind of in between, I would say all the guys, but has really found his voice. And I think his confidence here, he is he's got a little bit, I think, too, of that flair for the dramatic, some of the big moments and the
Mm-hmm.
big games. He is certainly not afraid to go in there and to let it rip and to make the big plays. And he's one of those guys that wants that and craves it. And that's one of the things I like about him the most. And it reminds me most of those guys you mentioned.
Lincoln Riley is the coach of 3 Heisman Trophy winners, the only active coach with that many Heisman Trophy winners to his credit. Thanks, Coach, for coming on the Heisman Trophy podcast. Thanks for your insights. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime, Chris. Really enjoyed it.
This is Mike Krzyzewski, and you're listening to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
This offseason, our podcast is asking a few simple questions, namely, where does greatness come from? How do we identify it? And how does it develop? Today's guest is one of the best answers to those questions that American sports has to offer. Kristi Yamaguchi was born with bilateral clubfoot. Her doctor suggested skating as therapy. She took to the ice at age 6, was rising at 4 a.m. to practice before school by 6th grade, and never stopped. She is the 1992 Olympic champion, a 2-time world champion, and in winning that gold medal in Albertville, became the first Asian American to win gold at a Winter Olympics game. Off the ice, her Always Dream nonprofit has spent nearly 3 decades getting books into the hands of children from low-income families, work that the Heisman Trust recognized in 2019 when it named her its Humanitarian Award winner for her service and dedication to underprivileged youth. That award is what brings her into the Heisman family. Kristi was in Milan recently to work NBC's Olympic coverage, and with Alyssa Liu just winning the first individual women's Olympic figure skating title for the United States in 24 years, there's plenty to talk about on that front as well. So please welcome Olympic gold medalist and 2019 Heisman humanitarian Kristi Yamaguchi to the Heisman Trophy podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
The pleasure is all ours. Great honor to have you on the show. Let's just talk some Olympics right off the bat, since it's fresh in our minds. Alyssa Liu just won gold in Milan, the first American woman to do so since Sarah Hughes in 2002. You've been watching this sport for decades now. What did you see from her that reminded you of what it takes to get the gold?
Yes. I mean, Alyssa just has such an amazing story with retiring at 16, coming back, taking a couple of years off to really find herself and to find really, I think, her own voice and deciding that, hey, I still have something in me. There's a competitive itch that needs to be scratched and the thrill of competition. And so she came back, won her first world championship last year, which set her up obviously for being one of the favorites this year. And I think she won. She's always been an incredible competitor. Like, she always pushed herself to be her best version, but also along with that, infused joy and love of the sport into her performances, which from a young age, it was like, oh yeah, of course she feels no pressure. She's, 15, 16. And, of course it's fun to watch her. She's just out there, her bubbly personality. But
Sure.
this year, under the incredible pressure of the Olympic Games, which is a whole nother animal, she still had that gamer attitude and that effervescent attitude and joy, which a lot of us who've experienced that Olympic moment, we're like, well, I don't know how she's doing it because
Right.
she's handling it so well. But, I think at the core, it was just a certain confidence that she had in herself, which you have to have when you're competing at that level.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then, conversely, Ilya Malinin came in as the heavy favorite and finished 8th. As someone who has felt the pressure of being the favorite, what do you think happened with him?
Well, physically, we knew he was the one to beat. Like, technically, has dominated the last 3 years in men's figure skating and really has taken it to another level. So, it was a complete, more of a mental side where maybe the preparation wasn't there about handling the pressure and what Olympic pressure is really all about. And, he's been so dominant. I think I wouldn't say easy for him the last 3 years, but, he's just had the confidence in riding that wave of, you know, really changing the sport and having that confidence. But the expectations, I think, were what ultimately, you know, got to him. And I think that moment that he stepped on the ice to compete, the expectations just were overwhelming, and maybe wasn't quite prepared on how to deal with that and how to channel, you know, that positive side of like convincing yourself, like, okay, I'm going to be okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's hard in that moment.
Yeah. How did you handle that? How did you get yourself to block all that other stuff out and to get out there in that moment with the eyes of the world upon you? I mean, most people would pee their pants in those situations,
Hmm.
but I mean, it's so impressive to just have that serenity to be able to knock it out. How do you
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say serenity in that moment and go, but like,
It
yeah,
it seems serene from our angle,
yeah, I think it's like
watching.
mentally trying to put yourself and find that serenity and just find, uh, you know, that positive place that you can be in, because it's terrifying. I mean, I was like terrified. I was like, no, I don't want to go out there. We all know what it's like, and it's just convincing yourself like I'm ready, like I've put the
Mhm,
work in, like just let your body do what it's trained to do. And it, you know, it's definitely playing mind games with yourself, because it's
mhm,
easy to be like, oh no, what if, you know, I don't feel good, I feel shaky, I don't feel strong, I'm going to get tired. It's easy to let all those thoughts like infiltrate your head, and it's just doing your best to try to push them out, like,
mhm.
no, I'm ready, like I'm
Yeah,
rested, I this is the moment. And you know, it's keeping yourself pumped up and as positive as possible.
yeah. I
Yeah.
was talking to Joey Cheek about that, the speed skating Olympic gold medalist from
Hmm.
2006, and he was talking about how, you know, there are people who are favorites to win, and then they don't necessarily, come up with their best performance in that situation. So it's like the curse of, like, bad luck in that situation.
Hmm.
Something happens, you just and it snowballs a bit during the routine. Um, if you're someone like, someone who didn't come through in that moment, do you, tell yourself that, "Hey, I can still be considered the best. I just couldn't do it in that moment," because it's the way the distribution of events of like outcomes landed in that
Right.
moment. You were
Yeah.
unlucky.
Yeah, and I think that is the thrill and the heartbreak of sport, right?
Hmm.
It's competition, and the winner isn't necessarily always the best person or the best team. It's the ones who can compete under the pressure
Hmm.
and to do the best in that moment, right? So, you know, I think that's why there's just so much excitement, thrill, and heartbreak at the Olympics, because
Mm.
there's been many moments where the best person or the favorite doesn't win, and
Yeah.
it doesn't, you know, and you hope, I'm hoping that this isn't the case with Ilya. He's young, he can come back in 4 years,
Yeah.
and I think he'll have that fire to really prove himself. Um, we use Nathan Chen as a good example of that. His first Olympics was one of the favorites and put himself out of the competition after mistakes in the short program, but came back, right, 4 years later, ready and prepared and mentally ready as well, and having a different level of maturity and confidence. So it's, sometimes you need that challenge and those roadblocks, and you
Hmm.
know, to be able to build on it, and to be able to be like, okay, there was a missing piece, there
Hmm.
was something that wasn't quite right, and let me work on that and come back ready.
Yeah.
And I think the people who eventually end up winning figure are able to figure that out.
Yeah. And with these two great athletes, one succeeded and one didn't in this particular moment. But gosh, it seems like they're doing a lot as ambassadors of the sport.
Mhm.
Where do you see American figure skating headed over the next Olympic cycle?
Very optimistic, and I think very encouraged with the future. Alyssa is planning, I think, to stay in another 4 years, which you know, it only took her a year and a half, 2 years to get to Olympic champion at this point, and who knows what
Mm-hmm.
she can bring back. Like, she was the first U.S. woman to land a quadruple Lutsen competition. Maybe she'll bring that back. Maybe she'll bring back the triple axel, which was in her repertoire before she retired at 16. That's certainly something that she hasn't hit her peak yet, I think,
Yeah.
honestly. And then Ilya Malinin, same thing. Like, he is only going to get stronger and better and more mature, commanding on the ice. So, and there's a lot of young talent behind them as well from U.S. figure skating. So, always a reason to be optimistic. And I think when you see Ilya and Alyssa being the leaders, and both of them being such incredible ambassadors, not just as champions, but as, they're just
Their flair, right?
encouraging.
They got a flair about
They
them,
got a
right? There's
flair,
some,
but
yeah.
they're also, examples of sportsmanship, of
Mm.
what it means to, support and be there for your competitors. And, what I saw in Milan was pretty extraordinary from both of them,
Yeah.
on how they each handled their individual situations the way they did.
Definitely. Going to your origins, you started skating as physical therapy for clubfoot. Is that right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I actually wanted to start it and just asked the doctors if that would be okay. And they're like, yeah, that
Mhm.
would be great. So they didn't recommend it. I wanted to try, and they said,
Got it.
sure, I think that would be good for you.
At what point did it stop being a hobby and something to get into and start being something that you really couldn't live without?
I mean, I loved it from the beginning, and just, just wanted to go as much as possible. And then, I probably started competing around 8 years old. And then by 11, 12, it was kind of like, oh, well, there's like more to this competition than we thought. Like, now I can represent the West Coast. And then as you get higher in your levels, from the West Coast, you can go to the national level. So it's gradual, right? It just kind of snowballs slowly.
Mhm.
And the progression was slow, but there was always motivation to keep going. And
Yeah.
probably by middle school, it was like, okay, I want to put more into this. Like, I'm going to drop all my other activities, which were minimal anyway, like basketball and just other things, and then
Yeah.
and focus on skating. So that at that point, it was like, 5, 6 days a week, and
Mhm.
starting to go before school, sometimes after school,
Yeah.
traveling on weekends for competitions. So yeah.
The whole upbringing of a skater, it's famous for just like the roughness of it as far as like the challenge of, like getting up early, and the coaches are famously known as being gruff. Like, there's an old Peanuts thing with Snoopy training Peppermint Patty in the morning, and all he does is snarl and gruff. um, but you had to have a lot of discipline
Mm.
to dig through, to get through that. Did that discipline come from you, your parents, or your coaches? Was it a combination of that? Like, how did you survive that whole process?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely learned discipline from my family, my parents, even my grandparents, and my coach, but it had to come from within, right? You can teach someone that, but if they don't apply it, then they're responsible for it, the athlete themselves. So,
Right.
so I think that discipline and the determination were huge factors on
Mhm.
just the progression and learning and staying on track and getting through some of those tough times.
Mhm. Were you always really competitive in everything you did?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I've chilled out a lot more now, but for sure, like, I always bring up the example. Like, I remember even on Easter egg hunts with my brother and sister when we were little, and I would want to be the fastest one out the door and collect the most eggs.
Mhm.
That was just little things like that. So yeah, I was always pretty competitive. I don't know what sparked that, but as kind of a timid, scrawny, like, I don't know, uncoordinated kid, I think having that competitiveness served me well.
Yeah, you were competing in both singles and pairs simultaneously at the elite level, which is something almost unheard of, right? What made you decide to drop the pairs and go all in on signals and singles? And how scary was that to bet on yourself in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I had always skated singles, right? Started as single skaters and then picked up pair skating when I was 11 with Rudy Galindo, and we skated for 7 years together. And in that short time, yeah, won two national U.S. pair titles. We were fifth in the world twice. And, as any relationship, it evolved, it changed. And, um, the last year we competed, it was a challenging year. We had lost our pair coach, Jim Hewlick. We were kind of in limbo and training and who was coaching us. Um, I think our goals started to be different. So, the partnership it was in a difficult situation. And competing in both singles and pairs at the world level, it was my third world championship or second world championship
Mm,
doing both singles and pairs. And at the time, we were still doing the compulsory figures. So I competed 5 days in a row, which was exhausting, and I didn't skate well in either event. And the writing was on the wall. Like, we were a strong U.S. pair team, but we weren't breaking into the top three at the world level. I mean,
mhm.
the Soviet Union was dominating, the Germans, the Czechs, the Canadians. So it was just like, this is probably as good as we're going to get right now.
Yeah.
And I was approached by an international skating union official and who was also American, and they said, "You know what? You've done amazing competing in both singles and pairs at the world level, but there's too much pressure at this level, too hard to do it in both. So you should really think about choosing one discipline, but we really think which is probably more US figure skating, feel that
Mhm.
you should go with the singles route because that's
Yeah.
where the potential is for you."
Yeah.
And, it was shocking because Rudy and I always thought our idols were Ty and Randy, and we just thought we'd have this
Yeah.
lifetime of performing together.
Yeah.
So it was like going through a really tough breakup.
Mm.
And, we were still kids, really. I was 19, 18 at the time. He was 19. So it was tough, but I think deep down we knew that it was probably the right decision.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it was like putting all the eggs in one basket, but at the same time, like, I knew I was always going to compete singles too.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it just kind of streamlined things, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Worked out.
Yeah,
Um,
luckily it worked
it
out, and for
worked
him
out
as
good.
well, he went
Mhm.
on to do great stuff as well.
Yeah, you mentioned, Ty Babylonia, Randy Gardner. Boy, they were a big thing, in the doubles or the pairs, and, there wasn't a whole lot of, uh, great, women skaters to look up to. You were really, I think, like the start of,
Uh,
US women's figure skating, but you said, Dorothy Hamill. I think we're around the same age. And I remember Dorothy Hamill and all the commercials she did, and she
mhm.
did so great with endorsements, and she was your idol growing up. And I guess she actually found you backstage in Albertville right before your free skate and told you to go have fun. What was going through your mind at that moment meeting Dorothy Hamill?
Yes, like that was yeah, first of all, I was like, "Wow, what is she doing here?" Like in Albertville. But yeah, obviously it was a thrill to meet her in person, and she gave me a little good luck present, and I was just kind of almost speechless, but
Mhm.
um it was really, really special moment. And I didn't know at the time, or maybe did I know? I mean, it was, so she was the last American woman to win a gold
Yeah.
medal. So I never imagined that, wow, I could be the first one
And
since my idol to win a gold
yeah.
medal. And
Yeah.
that's what ended up happening. So, she was 16 years earlier in 76. So that was pretty cool.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
One thing I wonder about, figure skating is judged. It's not timed. How do you prepare mentally for a competition where the finish line is someone else's opinion? You mentioned earlier, you talked about the Soviet Union. There's always that joke about the East German judges
Yeah.
and
Yep.
all that kind of thing. How do you think about like doing your best, but also knowing that it's subjective, that someone else is going to determine your outcome?
I have a really specific memory of one of my first competitions when I was maybe 8 years old, and remembering my mom and my coach telling me, like, hey, your goal is to go out there and do what you can do. That's all you have control over. And then the judges will judge. And what was the saying that my parents used to say? Let the chips fall where they may. I
Uh,
don't know. As a kid, I didn't know what that meant.
yeah,
Other
chips. What
than
kind of chips? Yeah.
right? Yeah, I was just like, where does that come from? But let the chips fall where they may. Like we have no control over it, right?
Yeah.
So, I just remember early on learning that, and that realizing that, yeah, you're right. I only have control of my performance. And if I go out there and fall 3 times, will I be happy with that performance, even if I win? No, probably not. Cause I'll be like,
Yeah.
I miss those things I know that I
Mhm.
can land or do.
Mhm.
So, that always became the goal early on. And if you realize that early on when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, by the time you're at the Olympics, it's kind of like you know how to play the game a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
okay, you want to stay within a certain boundary where you think all 9 judges are going to like your choice of music and your interpretation of
Mhm.
how you skate to it. You don't want to ostracize yourself and be offensive in any way where you're like, oh, I'm
Right.
collecting a score from this judge, right?
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, I have to go do my thing. If I don't do my thing, it makes their job a lot harder, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you, as a competitor, hope that your competition does their best and then you beat them at your best? Or if they fall or don't execute something very well, are you
Hmm.
thinking, okay, my strategy is different. When I skate, I'm going to be
Mm,
conservative, all that kind of thing? Is there a part of you that's just like, oh, I want to go out there. I want to go out there and have my best skate at this time and I'm going to go for it?
yeah.
Or are you thinking, I got to win the gold?
Um, I mean, there's always that one little thing that you always want to win, right? I mean, why are
Sure.
you competing if you don't actually want to win?
Yeah.
But that can't be your only motivation, right? Because it's in any sport, it's going to be constant disappointment, right? Because you're not always going to win unless you're like Tom Brady or something. So
Mhm.
it's like you have to have goals that will still fulfill you, right? Like, yeah, every performance means something. Like,
Mhm.
in skating, a fall is pretty detrimental, right, to your overall performance. So it's going out there and skating as clean as you can in that 4 minutes that you're given. And so that was always the main goal. And I always knew, like, hey, if I skate the way I know I can, I'll be fine. Like, even if I
Mhm.
come second or third, it's still a medal, it's still podium, and
Sure.
it it will motivate me to see, oh, what do I need to work on in order to next
Mm.
time be first.
Yeah, that's a great way to
um,
look at it, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Those 1992 Olympics featured you, Nancy Kerrigan, and Tanya Harding, arguably the most talent-dense women's field in the history of the sport. Um, what do you remember most about the atmosphere in that arena when you were skating out there
In
to begin your
91
routine?
when we swept the podium, or
In
or
92,
92. Oh,
the
in
Olympics, yeah,
92.
yeah,
Oh yeah, because
yeah,
in 92 the three of us were coming in as
yeah.
we had swept the podium at Worlds the year before. So,
Mhm.
um, I mean, good energy. This was obviously before the whole scandal thing with Tanya
Sure.
and Nancy, but we felt like we were a strong team and the ones, setting the bar. I mean, obviously we knew Midori Ito of Japan. She was the biggest rival for gold that year, also doing the triple axel, also technically the one responsible to pushing the bar of women's skating to a higher technical level. So, um, there was just a lot of energy with like, okay, who's gonna land what? Like
Mm,
is the triple axel gonna make the difference? Who's gonna stay on their feet under the pressure and things like that. But I think the US team felt pretty confident, and we should have. We came away with 3 medals that
yeah,
year. Obviously, 2 in the ladies' event, one Paul Wiley silver in the men's. So we had a pretty strong team.
for sure. Looking back, what do you think separated the skaters who had the most talent to reach the top from those who actually got there? Like, there's a lot of talented guys or women who you think, oh, if they had only done this, they would have been there. And then there's the ones who actually got there. Like, what do you think is the big separation?
Mm. I mean, it's always preparation, right? It's always being ready for the moment and mentally, physically, like we talked earlier. And yeah, I think it's putting the time in. I mean, my coach, Kristi Ness, always told us, her students, there's no secret to success, at least in sport. Like, it's plain and simple hard work. Like,
Hmm.
you will see results if you put the work in. And, I always took that to heart. And I always felt like, okay, I am going to put as much work in as I can, work as hard as I can, and be satisfied with that when I get to competition. Um, and, I can see what my competitors, how they trained. I could see what their tendencies were in practice. And sometimes that gave me more confidence because I'm like, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
they're
how
not going to make it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not sure they're as ready as they think they are.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't that's something I could see and what gave me confidence sometimes in competition. And, other times, obviously, you are nervous because even though you've prepared, it's still 90% mental once you get
Hmm.
there in that moment. But
Yeah.
um, it's you got to put the work in. I mean, I always remember people saying how Jerry Rice was the first one on the field at practice and the last one leaving the field at practice. And like we were huge 49er fans, like the team of the 80s, right? It was just
Yeah.
they were our team. And hearing things like that were stuck with me. And it's
Hmm.
like, that's why he's the GOAT. Like, that's
Yeah.
why no one can beat him, touch him. He puts the work in, and I wanted
Hmm.
to be like that as well.
Yeah. And you were like that, and you, of course, transferred it to a bunch of other things. Dancing with the Stars. You went there and you won that, right? I mean, it's like the same principles you're talking about. You probably just applied to that. And also, we're also talking about your great nonprofit, Always Dream. This is the 30th anniversary of that.
Mhm.
It's exciting times there. You're going to have not one, but 2 galas to celebrate this year. The first in Honolulu is coming up on April 25th.
Mhm.
Second in San Francisco, October 24th. Right now, your Always Reading program has 40 school partners this year across Northern California and 4 Hawaiian Islands, serving over 5,800 children and family members, with more to come. Always Dream started broadly and then narrowed its focus to early childhood literacy. So, what
Mhm.
drove that decision, and what does the research tell us about why that window matters so much?
Yeah, so it was about 2012, and my kids were at that learn to read stage. They were 4 and 6 ish, around there. I had just written my first children's picture book during Big Little Pig. And I was exposed to just literacy everywhere, right? Going to libraries, visiting schools, just doing story time readings to kids all over. And I love that. It was so much fun. And so seeing the joy on the kid's face whenever you know, told a story was awesome. And that's one of my favorite memories looking back as a parent, that story time, bedtime reading with our kids when they were little and them picking out their books and having their favorite ones. And, as we were diving into like early education and the importance of reading, realizing the literacy statistics here in the US and how shocking they are, considering what a great country we are, right? And the
Yeah.
resources we do have. There's so many that don't, like over 60% of families who are low income areas have zero age appropriate books in the home for the kids. That's like heartbreaking, thinking as a parent, like there's kids out there who go to bed without that bedtime story. So that motivated me to one, provide access to high quality books that are age appropriate for as many kids as possible. And then, pairing that with family engagement where we can really support the family members at home on um, sitting down and reading to their kids,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how important their role of just engaging and connecting with their child at home over books is, and what a difference that can make in the foundation of their education, which is really going to take them, throughout their educational career and onto, contributing to the community later on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's been a tremendous success. Obviously, you're a football fan. When the Heisman Trust called with the Humanitarian Award, what did it mean to you to be recognized by an organization that's so identified with football and college sports?
At first I was like, wait, is this right? I'm a figure skater. Um, but obviously a tremendous honor, and looking at so many of the past recipients, and then also seeing that Mia Hamm was the only other female that was honored with the Heisman Trophy at that time. Humanitarian Award was amazing, and like so many of my heroes had been honored, and seeing the great work that they do in the community. I think it just fuels us more to do more and to keep at it. But I'm just honored, and also proud to be part of such a small part, right, of such an amazing legacy that stands for such excellence, one, but also with the Heisman Foundation, um, truly what it means to care and be a part of your community
Mm.
and to make impact in the community. I think it's really great that they recognize that and support that.
And I love it too because I get to talk to people like you and Misty Copeland, which is off the beaten path from who I usually get to talk to. You got to taste that weekend of being around a bunch of football people, old and new. What's that like compared to the skating scene? Being around the skaters, and is it all the same, or are they all elite athletes of the same mentality, same kind of thing, but just different sports, or is it totally different vibe?
It's a little different vibe. Like for sure, in 2019 when I was honored, um, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm adding some feminine energy here. 'Cause, there's like all these like, 300, 250 pound football players.
Sure.
But obviously I am a huge football fan. So uh, in some ways it was similar because there's a mutual respect on each other's accomplishments in our respective sports, and um yeah, I think we learn a lot from each other, we gain a lot of inspiration from each other, so so positive all around. And there I'm on the Heisman Foundation Humanitarian Award side. A lot of the football players are also there as Heisman Trophy winners.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a brotherhood, and that is incredible to see, and just really amazing to they truly love each other, and it's like a camaraderie that is nice to see in any sport. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Kristi, can you let our listeners know the best way they can get involved with Always Dream?
Sure. I mean, you can visit our website, alwaysdream.org, and there's more information about our program, where we serve, um, uh, our happenings, our events that are coming up. Like you mentioned, the galas in April as well as October, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. and how to maybe get involved. Like, we're always looking to tell our story more. So thank you for having me on the
For sure.
podcast because, we are obviously passionate about what we do. And the more people know of what we do, the more impact we can make.
Well, you are always welcome to come on here and talk about what you're up to. Any new plans you guys come up with, any announcements, be sure to send them my way. We'll at least mention it. Gosh, it's been a
Thank you.
major honor to chat with you, Kristi. Congrats again on a brilliant career. And we at the Heisman wish you continued success. We're proud you are part of our family, and we thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. I'm honored as well.
The Heisman Trophy podcast is now year-round, weekly during the college football season and monthly in the offseason. It's produced, edited, and hosted by Chris Houston. The audio portion of the podcast is available on all streaming services, and the video portions are on YouTube and TikTok. Special thanks goes out to the Heisman Trophy Trust, Heisman CEO Jeff Price, and Heisman Vice President Tim Henning. For comments, criticisms, and feedback, be sure to reach us at pod@heisman.com.